I'm 65. I grew up in Chicago, the industrial suburbs of Chicago. Um, I, uh, I went to college. I went to engineering school, but I also got a degree in psychology. So I was thinking of first being a doctor, and then after 3 years said no, and I went into engineering and spent 5 years. And I worked in engineering for most of my professional career. The federal government, Congress passed a law that said that if you were older than 60, a first-time offender, a nonviolent offense, you could be released at two-thirds of your sentence. Okay,
This
and
was this
so
is the First Step Act.
this is the First Step Act, and I qualified for that. So I pushed towards that. My counselor made some conscious errors in my paperwork to slow that down, and that delayed me probably 6 weeks. Now, that I was scheduled to get out in March, the third week in March. All right, well, the coronavirus hit the world January, February, but since there was no testing whatsoever at the prison facility for the longest time, um, we just simply, it's kind of like you bury your head in the sand. Um, and then they came to the camp, and we started to have people get sick. We started to have people disappear and go over to the hospital. And they came to our unit, one of 4 houses, and they did an overnight test. And out of the 80 people, well, no, there was 70 people there at the time. But then they did another test, and we had actually 20 some people that, excuse me, 26 people tested negative. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
The balance were positive. Okay. So they tried to separate us out. The way they did that is they emptied one of the buildings completely, and they put all those prisoners in the other 3 buildings, stacking beds in the TV rooms, filling every bunk conceivable. And then we went in this other building, and slowly we were whittled down to 14 because they kept testing us. People kept leaving. And then ultimately, we went through 5 periods of 14-day quarantine because as soon as someone got sick, our clock started over. And so it wasn't really a quarantine because we were in the same building with the same people, standing in lines with them, living, breathing the same air. And I kept seeing people disappear. And, I sat on the phone and I watched a man. This was 5 days before I finally left prison. He was in a wheelchair. He had been struggling. I watched him spend 30 minutes trying to travel 25 feet to the door that he would go into to get to his bed.
Wow.
Literally bumping into the wall, bumping into this. They took him away the next day. 3 days later, he died. And he was in the clean group. And finally, we got to the day up that I was supposed to be released, which was April 29th. And there was one other gentleman that was supposed to get on April 29th. And as we found that people do, you pack up all of your belongings and have it ready, and they call you, they come and get you, and they drag you out early. Well, it got to be 9 o'clock. We're sitting in the TV room. All of our stuff is piled up, boxes and boxes, and that administrator had returned, and she came in and she says, "No one's going home today." So we all got on a bus, and we went. We rode around the facility and went into I didn't know what prison it was at the time, but it was the Love. And we went in the first gate, and they have 2 gates so that the gate has to close before the other one opens, so no one can run out while both gates are open, yada, yada, yada. Well, and we sat there for 2 hours on the bus. And the people at the little security house within that little enclosure kept going back and forth to the bus driver, back and forth, back and forth. And finally they came out, and somebody came, I didn't know who he was, and he said, "Okay," he said, we're going to pull in now. He said, Thompson, whoever you are, stay in your seat. Don't get off. Okay. So, okay. About 2 minutes later, the warden of the overall facility walks through the security gate, walks down the road, walks in the security gate, walks through the second security gate, gets on the bus, says, who's Thompson? Says, you, stay on the bus. Says, we're going to take you back and you're going to go get your stuff and we're going to gather your stuff and your medical records and your money and your IDs and all at 5 different places. And you know, so just stay on the bus, because she got an instruction, I guess, through your efforts from the judge saying, no, he's getting out today.
How did it feel? I mean, to walk out and see Phil and Wani and be free.
It was unbelievable. I mean, I was wearing real clothes. I actually had blue jeans on. I had a belt. I had to open some mail that they had received for me. And I got to ask for a knife. I hadn't had a knife. I mean, you know, these are all the, I kept saying, and plus seeing things, okay? Seeing people, okay? Seeing a McDonald's, okay?
What advice would you have for a law student who is going to be working on a case like yours?
Wow, copy what Elizabeth did. I mean, you know, that level of enthusiasm and engagement, and you know, they should get in the system if they have a passion to help people, and if they want to feel like they had an impact, because they may not win in every situation, but the impact it has on the prisoner is, win or lose, the end result. The impact on the prisoner is phenomenal, okay? Because you're people that have no hope, no expectation, no nothing, okay? And even giving them some glimmer of promise. This, you know, it's, the impact is just, it's life-changing. So it's pretty amazing.
My name is David Stringer Jr. I'm 74 years old, and I'm in Rayford, North Carolina, at 242 Hackney Lane.
How you been feeling these last couple days, these last 2 weeks since you got home?
Great. I can't even describe it. Great.
And what led to your incarceration in federal prison?
Oh boy, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. It just caught up with me. I got trapped in the drug ring. I was really using more drugs than I was doing anything else. That's how I got really.
So tell me what kept you going? What gave you hope when you were serving your time?
My past life was the way I was raised. My mom, my sisters, my kids, and their mom.
And then when we contacted you to start Compassionate Release, what were you thinking?
I knew something was going good for me then, because I hadn't been going like this. Everything was going real good.
What was it like working with law students?
That was great. They were great. But they were answering all the questions I asked and doing everything they could for me. I couldn't say nothing. I couldn't say nothing.
So when you finally got the call, when I told you were finally going home, what was going through your head?
You wouldn't believe it. I was waiting on. I had some money that they was trying to get back put on my account, and I had talked to them earlier that morning, and they told me they'd get back with me. And when they called me, that's what I thought it was. I thought they was telling me to call me to tell me about the money. And when I got there, they told me one of the case manager told me, say, "Well, you're going home after all." I said, "What are you talking about?" And then they called me in there and told me they had a phone call. You was coming. You gonna call back? And then I was like, wow. That was I don't know what I don't know. That was a good feeling.
I told your daughter, I said, just let him get on the bus. Just don't risk another night in prison. Just get him on that bus.
I appreciate you so much too, boy. You really been there. I appreciate you.
See, now you have the gift of time. You can take the time, all the time you want.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And stay out of the way of trouble. That's the thing I know to do. I don't want to be around. I'm away from everything right here. I like this is perfect.
It's kind of a nice way to come back, you know, have some space, time. And
Beautiful way. A beautiful way to come back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm for real. I'm for real. I'm here.
so yeah, where are you? Why don't you tell us where you are and what you're doing right now?
I'm at south of Dallas in a place called Glen Heights. I don't know, about half an hour from Dallas, going on to Waco. And it's kind of out in the country. It's really nice. I'm writing right now, so this is a great environment for me to write. I'm working on my second book right now, but this is what I wanted. I'm finally free, and I'm doing what I want to do.
How long have you been out? What day were you released?
I came out on January the 24th of 2019. No, 2019. So I've been out, a year and 2 months.
Where do you draw from when you're serving life, but yet you're still, you still have hope that you can get out one day?
Well, first of all, I think it's a natural thing for the human aid to never lose hope, but I learned not to live with it. So what I did very early is just I accepted my fate, is that I was going to die in prison. And so if that was the case, then I was going to have to do things that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do, like change the way I suffer for things. My whole human condition had to be changed. So through some disciplines that I learned and other things, I was able to do that because I knew I was going to die in prison. So, I wanted those changes to come about before I leave the world. So I accepted my fate. Once I accepted my fate, then things were easier. When you guys came into the scene, I wasn't expecting that, because I had put in my application for Obama, but like when it first came out, and I think 2 years had gone by, so I just gave that up. So when you guys came in and saw what you wanted to do, though it was kind of in a hurry, because Obama was about to leave the office, And then I saw what you put in and saw the letter of recommendation from my judge. It just blew me away. I said, wow, there's the same man that put me away saying I was going to die in prison 30 years ago. So that was kind of a, my hope, really got strong then. Then I knew that, having the judge making that kind of recommendation, and thanks to you, because you're the one behind all that, by the way. So, I was kind of brought back from the tomb, and so, and it's been different since then. So, yeah.
What does that mean to you? How does it feel to have a lawyer, given that so many people in there don't have lawyers and want them?
Well, that was sort of surprising to me because, I didn't realize, because I never really had that kind of help. But when you guys came into the scene, it's just like I said, sort of like my little hope got bigger, and I began to smell the outside. So suddenly I saw myself out. So yeah, it makes a lot of difference when someone of your stature begins to, help out. It just, it's just very positive. Even if you don't come out, you still, at least, you felt like you gave it a big effort and someone tried to help you. Yeah. And yeah, it was great.
What did you find most helpful, or why did you think we did have a good relationship? What about that worked for you?
It had a lot to do with the way you stayed in contact, the way you raised my hopes, and you were very frequently in communication with me, and so, and by not giving up after Obama leaves, that made a hell of a difference, because even if I didn't get out, I had you in the corner and we were going to fight all the way, even if I didn't get out. So that in itself was great. So I would say to other attorneys that having some kind of personal feelings towards the case and the inmate, you get more details, you get, more honesty, you get more communication, and things just look brighter to the other side, whether you, succeed or not. So yeah, definitely, do try to get a little bit more personal with the cases.
What was the first thing you did when you got released? Do you remember? What?
My sister picked me up at 9 o'clock and over in Georgia, and she says, "What's the most you miss eating?" I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, I want to take you to eat. So what is the thing that you miss the most?" And she was expecting probably like a steak and who knows. I said, "I want to eat an avocado."
They're delicious.
And so coming out, I think the most surprising thing was the GPS. Can you believe that? I put those things in there and it takes me right to where I want to go. I said, wow, how did I do that? But anyway, that's, whatever. I'm almost 7. I was 70 a couple of weeks ago, a few days ago. And so I see myself as not having too much time left in this world. So I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. Whatever I'm at, whatever I'm doing, it's going to be to the max. And because, now I have a realization that life is finite, that, this fiction of, heaven and earth and all that, well, it's fiction for me, but it's not reality. The reality is that I'm a dying being, that I'm going to die, and it could happen anytime. So I enjoy the day, each day I try to live as if it was my last day. So, and I don't have too many things planned, but whatever comes, it will be there for me to enjoy. Yeah.
Well, I'm from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and I'm about to be 44 years old in 3 days. So this is going to be the first birthday that I've actually celebrated outside of prison since I was 29 years old.
Wow.
So yes, so this is a monumental a birthday, and I've already had family and everybody saying, we want you to come over, we want to see you. You know, even in the midst of this pandemic, we'll do the best we can to socially distance.
How did it feel the day you were sentenced?
The day I was sentenced was, it was a very emotional day. I had the whole courtroom filled with my family. At that time, my attorney said because of the mitigating factors, my mental health, the loss of my wife, my daughter, all my family support, the fact that I had completed treatment, that he's like, you're going to get a 15-year sentence. I didn't even know the law at that point. So there was no way I could get a 15-year sentence because I had a minimum mandatory of 40 years. So the day I got sentenced before Judge Longstaff, 42 and a half years, he started clicking them off, 150 months, 100 months, 300 months, 60 months. And I heard my dad behind me said, turned to my co-defendant's attorney and said, how long was that? She says, that's 42 and a half years. And my dad stood up and they had to escort him from the courtroom because he just thought this is a travesty. He's like, my son's never coming home. I'm never going to see him again. So as soon as that came out, I went to work on my compassionate release motion. And, you know, and I pulled it out today because as you can see, this thing is this thick. This
And just to interject really quickly, this was before the pandemic even hit, right?
That's right. Yes, this is before the pandemic. You have to remain hopeful because the very definition of hope is to want or wish for with confident expectation. So when you look at that, every word has meaning, confident expectation. And that's what we hope for. We're not just hoping that this is going to, no, it's confident expectation. So we're literally, I was waiting for the phone to ring and they're telling me to pack up for years. And that's where I kept myself because what helped, it helped me, it motivated me to continue to do the next right thing, to load up my class schedule like I was in college and read books and, you know, maintain, I earned licenses while I was in prison, took college courses, taught, you know, various school classes. And so what it did is, like you said, it allowed me to maintain hope at the highest level. So the pandemic hits and now everybody's scared to death. They're locking us in our cells. We're thinking this is bad now. And what we see out here is nothing compared to what it's like inside. The news stations stay on the TVs 24/7. The cops aren't coming to work. It's like pandemonium inside. So at this point I see, okay, I need to file a reconsideration at this point because I've got underlying health conditions and this de facto life sentence shouldn't be a death sentence. Mind you, we're on lockdown. I can't get to the telephone. I can't get to the computers. So I'm just waiting and I'm waiting. And I'm a Trulinks orderly, so I get let out of my cell every once in a while to clean the computers, disinfect them and stuff like that. So the order comes through and I don't even know it yet. So I get out and I get on the phone and I call my co-defendant and he's screaming on the phone. He says, "You're coming home." And I just start crying because at this point, I can't believe it. You know, I've waited all these 15 years for this to happen. And he's saying, "You're coming home." It's emotional. It's, you know, because 23 years is what Judge Pratt took off me. 23 years, you know, so I was slated to be in prison until I was 66 years old. And it was pointless. It was pointless to keep me in prison. And that's one of the things that I strive to do every day is to show them that it was pointless. That all you needed to do was open the door. And that's what they did. Open the door, gave me $28 and put me on a flight. And that's all I needed. Whew. When I first, when John L. Baines called me, I was actually out on the job site and I had to sit down. And I'm thinking, here it is. My worst fears have just been realized. They're going to put me back in prison. And that's what I was waiting for that whole time, for that hammer to drop. They're going to put me back in prison. And so I was, and I was so fearful. I'm thinking, gosh, how am I going to do this? Because here I am, I'm going to have to start all over and litigate this myself. And I'm not qualified. I cannot do this. And then the law clinic says, we're going to take your case. And it was like a sigh of relief because I wasn't alone anymore. And that's why I told you I'll do anything for you, because that right there took a weight off my shoulders. I said, okay, I don't have to fight this alone. And that's really what I want you to know and your students to know, that it does matter, that somebody out there sees that prisoners do matter, that we're human beings. And just having somebody say, yeah, I'm going to fight with you, it changes the whole dynamic. It allows you to say, okay, now I can breathe. It's like having a foot on your neck and it's lifted up. You're like, okay, I can get some air now. And that's how I felt. I felt like it's going to be okay.
What is some of the most compelling evidence that you've seen in terms of compassionate release? You've talked about sentencing disparities, those who were sentenced before the guidelines became advisory, or maybe when mandatory minimums changed.
C. Daniel Brown.
C. Daniel Brown, yes.
I mean, those facts. I mean, look what happened to him with the medical care in prison. His family, the change in the law. I mean, his plan. I mean, it's almost too good. You can't make this up. It's almost so. All the facts in the world overwhelm the law. So, I know you tell your students this anyway, but great facts make great law. Literally every case is different. And so, we criticize the guidelines because you can't fit everybody into this. And so you can't match up defendant A with defendant B, because what's sufficient but not greater than necessary for A isn't the same for B. So I've come to the conclusion what I have to do is figure out what's compelling and compassionate for A and what's compelling and compassionate for B may be different. And I try not to let this affect me, Allison, but one of the things I'm concerned about, and I think the more that you and the students can emphasize, what's your plan? You're taking a person that's been confined for a very long time and you're throwing them. I'm concerned about public safety. If, when I give sentences and it goes wrong, and, I think the first rule is to try to look out for public safety. And so I try to look at the plan. I think the plan, it can't be overemphasized how important the plan is.
But I'm wondering, is there anything else that you think law students should know in particular when they're working on these motions?
Well, they're very lucky to have the opportunity to do this kind of work because, I, and, you know this and your colleagues know this, defending somebody's liberty is the highest calling of a lawyer. So to get the opportunity to do it while a student is like, waking up on Christmas Day or whatever, opening day at baseball or whatever. So, it's just an opportunity that they have to give back. Most law students are have been very blessed, and they're at great institutions. And here they find somebody who's, the opposite. And I think one of the best qualities of lawyering and judging, for that matter, doing anything, is empathy. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a young African-American, Hispanic, working class white person who hasn't had your opportunity. And here you have the chance to make a huge difference in your life. I mean, why wouldn't you knock yourself out? It's kind of, this is the reason you came to law school.